The first morning of 2019 was our first day in San Diego, where we visited Balboa Park and the San Diego Seaport. Fun fact, Balboa Park is larger than Central Park in New York, so there was some sort of loneliness and excitement to knowing and not knowing what was ahead of us. The next day was for the Museum of Man. It was this insane place that held all these sorts of exhibits, like the Beerology exhibit and the Mayan exhibit. But Dad's favorite was the Cannibals exhibit.
Dad's favorite?
Afterwards, we visited the tower on top of the museum, and this is a panoramic view of everything around. You could basically see all of San Diego. Afterwards, we visited the San Diego Botanical Garden, which happens to be one of the largest attractions there, holding thousands of species all in one place. It was eternally beautiful. But if you really want to be a tourist in the area, don't forget to ride on these $1 scooters. Early the next morning, we were on these roads. If you go east of San Diego, the terrain is really hilly and winding and narrow, but we had so many times of just going down these insanely windy roads and just being surrounded by mountains and snow, and the only sign of civilization was just a sign or two. And you just wanted to go like as slow as possible just to see everything around us. Unfortunately, not everyone is like that. There were so many people who just passed us going like 95 miles an hour on all these sports cars, where my dad was just trying to go the speed limit and survive. After the hills, we stopped in this valley. Some of the best parts of California were passing by snow and desert all in the same hour. We had just seen videos of all the snow surrounding, and now we're in the Borrego Desert, listening to Queen, and obviously this is a great photo op, right? So here we are at Borrego Springs, officially. This was really interesting because they had all these metal sculptures that were completely rusted, and they looked like they were some relic of an old museum idea, trying to make the spot worth going to, even though it was already so worth going to. This panorama doesn't really capture anything, even though it is a good photo. There are all these. This is the beginning of us exploring the cacti and the wilderness that were completely unlike New Jersey. So having these little sculptures to kind of bring us back to reality were in a way comforting and a reminder that we were still in America. This giant tree, this plant, was something that we were living in the same country as. So afterwards, where Highway 74 meets Interstate 10, we stopped in Coachella Valley, which was this viewing point that you could see all the way through the mountains down to this little desert oasis called Palm Desert. And it looked so artificially beautiful after all these mountains and dirt. So we're just in the car listening to Blackbird by the Beatles, passing by actual street signs with painted roads, with these mountains in the background, and knowing that this small little town, which is so commercial, is also surrounded by these viewing points. After the oasis, we've arrived in Joshua Tree National Park, our actual destination, where sometimes we could just be the most touristy people out there. Dad had these amazingly loud, swooshy pants, and trying to find wildlife, like those tiny little birds, or that rabbit that you see over there, the jackrabbit. was impossible because he was making all this sound. But when we were in the car, it was nice and quiet and peaceful. And fun fact, the Joshua trees were actually named after when the Mormons came to this park and saw these trees kind of reaching out towards the sky and thought, hey, that looks like Joshua reaching out to God. And you can kind of see it. Because all of a sudden, they'll come out of nowhere. But the park itself is also surrounded by the Cholla cactus gardens that are quite dangerous. They're called jumping cacti for a reason, so you have to stay on the trails this time, unless you want to get impaled by these spiny needles. And yet, those tiny little birds, look at them. They're just chilling. It was so important to put the camera down at points and just take in everything. They call all experience of the senses mystic when the experience is considered. So an apple becomes mystic when I taste in it the summer and the snows, the wild welter of earth, and the insistence of the sun. All of which things I can surely taste in a good apple. Though some apples taste preponderantly of water, wet and sour, and some of too much sun, brackish sweet like lagoon water, that has been too much sunned. If I say I taste these things in an apple, I am called mystic, which means a liar. The only way to eat an apple is to hog it down like a pig and taste nothing that is real. But if I eat an apple, I like to eat it with all my senses awake. Keep in mind, our trip was during the government shutdown, so this was a national park, and normally people would camp here, but we weren't allowed to. So, as soon as we got home, we heard news of people, tourists coming down, and since there was no one to tell them to not, they've been knocking down the Joshua trees. Not only do wildlife such as rodents, birds, lizards, and bats depend on the Joshua trees, the species itself will likely be declared threatened under the U.S. Endangered Species Act. This whole area actually is quite historic. This specific part is called Hidden Valley, and is actually one of the most visited places in Joshua Tree National Park. It exhibits different parts of nature, like some sort of interactive museum. We thought the 1.5-mile hike deserved its own clip.
The great burrito? That one?
Why?
Oh, I guess it looks like a burrito to some people.
Maybe it's because they climb so much they get hungry.
So it's talking about how chalks might be less used here. Not very true over there. That looks like a popular route. With a number of chalk marks there. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it's kind of self-imposed by climbers. In the past they used to use pitons a lot, meaning they drive something into the wall, and they don't use that anymore. Now protection is things that you put in, then you take it with you.
What's a walk through a national park without a little education lesson, right? We call it a grain of sand, but it calls itself neither grain nor sand. It does just fine without a name, whether general, particular, permanent, passing, incorrect, or apt. Our glance, our touch mean nothing to it. This here is Barker Dam, which was constructed by C.O. Barker in 1990, meant for cattle. Now it is home for birds and desert bighorn sheep. Our final ascent in Joshua Tree National Park was up Orion Mountain. This was a really frequented spot. It's 1,000 feet in the air and 1.5 miles up. It's supposed to take 2 to 3 hours, and we saw an old man on crutches going up the mountain, a little girl hiking up. You could really see all of Joshua Tree National Park, and if you see on the right over there, that's Mount Regina, which is the tallest mountain in the whole range.
Hello.
Hello.
Wow, this video is solid now.
Alright, goodbye Joshua Tree, hello Pasadena, California, home to Caltech, not Stanford University. Somehow made that mistake, but they're 7 hours apart. Pasadena was university town, and then afterwards we just kind of hightailed it out of there to Huntington Beach. Huntington Beach is actually very well known for all its wildlife and birds and terns, but actually the thing that stood out the most was all the trash. And if you believe in global warming, or if you don't, let's just say that like the trash is despicable and kind of ruins the whole approach of the beach. But it was good to see because it made you more aware of things. Look at these birds. They're just having the time of their lives. Okay, final stop to Carlsbad, California. The best beach I've ever been to, and I'm not really a beach person. It was warm and perfect, and you just kind of got an ice cream from a local parlor and just walked across the beach barefoot. As when someone has gone into a dream so far that he'll never remember he was there when he comes back to his room. Till next time, California.